Locked on target. Prepare for impact.
Pain. You know, the thing about money is, depending on how you're wired, if you spend a bunch of it, it can be very painful. However, typically when you're spending money, you're probably enjoying the thing you're spending the money on. And this last month was a bit of a mixed bag. I was spending on stuff that I wanted to spend on, and also stuff that I don't really want to spend money on. Because on the one hand, I spent thousands of dollars on a really amazing trip that I took with my wife to Salzburg, Austria to celebrate our 4th anniversary, and that was a really great experience and was a very worthwhile trip. I was also spending thousands of dollars towards paying the rest of my roof replacement balance, as well as the many other thousands that I spent towards my business that currently is going through some major changes. And I'm throwing money at it to try and solve some different problems and also get it to the next level, and that has been expensive. More on that in the video linked above. But I think the real kicker this month was the fact that my income was also down, partly because of the vacation, but also because my income is variable at this point, completely variable. I don't have a set salary coming in. Instead, I really am only making money when I am personally billing hours for clients as an attorney, or if my business is making money as well as my real estate making money. At least that has been making money to this point, but compared to the other expenses, it really just isn't that much. But in other months, my income might be much, much higher, and that's just kind of the nature of a lot of entrepreneurial activities. The income tends to be lumpy. But I'll get into that shortly. For now, let's go ahead and rip the band-aid off and get into the numbers. As a reminder, last month our net worth was $152,000. As always, let's start with the good stuff, the assets. The biggest change from last month would be my cash balance, which is way down from last month, and that's because I was throwing a lot of money at a lot of different things, like I kind of was mentioning, between my roof, my business, and the vacation we took. That was many thousands of dollars being spent, and we didn't have a bunch of income coming in to cover that. Now, I am expecting to make significantly more legal fees next month, but I don't want to include anything here just in case stuff falls through or for some reason I don't get paid, but I'm expecting at least somewhat of a recoup from this month's lack of legal fees. And I'm also expecting a significant amount of my assets to be converted into cash within the next month, mainly between the Indianapolis rental property, which still hasn't sold, and technically we're under contract through the beginning of September, although we'll see what happens with this buyer. Time will tell. And I'll be getting this business loan balance returned to me, so that'll be a nice boost to liquidity. And I do want to emphasize that I don't count the money that I have set aside for reserves for my real estate, so I do have more cash than this, although it's not absurdly more, but I do have thousands and thousands of dollars set aside for reserves because you just have to have that ready to go when it comes to rental property. It's not really freely accessible cash because I want to make sure it's tied to the real estate specifically when it's actually needed, so I don't count it here for net worth purposes. So the situation isn't quite as dire as it might look on the cash front. At the same time, I lost a few $1,000s in market value when it comes to all my stock holdings in my various accounts, so that did not help the asset front either. All told, that leaves me with just shy of $1.27 million in assets. And now on to liabilities. Not a whole lot to report here. I will say that technically speaking, the student loans are going to start accruing interest in this next month, barring something very drastic very soon from the federal government to wave some sort of magic wand once again. We'll see what happens there, but payments are expected to resume in the next month. Meanwhile, as has been the theme for the past few months, I've been making my minimum payments towards all of these loans. As much as I'd love to do more accelerated payments, as you can see by my cash situation, I want to be careful. If we look at my debt paydown tracker, and by the way, you can check all this out in the description below, I have a link to my net worth tracker spreadsheet, which shows all the in-depth metrics if you're interested. But I paid off another $3,000+ in debt over the last month, which brings my cumulative total up to about $56,000, which is definitely short of the pace line as I'm trying to reach $200,000 in debt paydown by the end of the year. Granted, I expect a lot of that to come from the sale of my Indianapolis property, as well as simply having some better income months to then pour towards debt. But either way, well over $50,000 in debt paydown is nothing to scoff at, and it has been a productive step in the right direction. Granted, it's definitely short of where I'd ideally like to be. We'll see where I end up by the end of the year. But all told, cold, that leaves me with just short of $1.14 million in liabilities, which means our net worth has decreased to just short of $130,000, which is a record-beating decrease of over $22,000, which means our debt ratio has risen to 89.78%, and our passive income remains at about $600 per month. So that's the biggest decrease in the history of this series. Ouch. Now, in some ways, you could say I have a spending problem right now, but I think the real problem is income and making sure that I can get that back up. Now that I'm working entirely for myself, whether it be through my business or my legal practice, there's a lot that's riding on my own performance as well as my ability to actually bring in income. It's not as simple as waiting until the end of the month and then receiving a paycheck. Instead, I actually have many paychecks to pay now that I have employees, and that employee headcount is growing and there are people to pay, and I want to make sure I pay them before I pay myself. And unfortunately, in the last month, that meant not paying myself at all and instead paying money to the cause. But I'm still pretty optimistic looking ahead to the end of the year, and that's because some of the things that we're setting up in the business, mainly in building out a sales team, which I've talked about on the channel a bit at this point, it's going pretty well. We're getting some traction. We're getting a lot more appointments set for larger commercial clients, which would be a really great boost to the business. The problem is a lot of the administration in setting all this up is expensive to start, so I've been throwing money at it. But if the majority of things go well, it doesn't all have to go well, then we should be in a really good spot by the end of the year, and we'll be back up on our feet. And it should be actually a much stronger position than we were before, since we'll have a much more robust team. But there's plenty to learn in the process. And as for the law practice side of things, I've actually started to run ads to my website, which I hadn't been doing up until this point. So that should drum up some more business on the legal side, and that would be a nice boost to income in the meantime. And if not, I'll continue to network, and I should be able to find new clients that way. September is poised to be an interesting month. I think my income is going to be significantly higher than it was in this last month, so we'll see if the damage is quite as large. If there is any damage at all, maybe we'll be back in the green, but we'll see. All I can focus on is continuing to try to push forward. So that's what I'm gonna do. But if you like this video, I put out a new episode of this net worth series every single month, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.